They laughed at her for years, called her invisible, treated her like she didn't matter. But the truth was, she was never meant to stay small. And the day that truth came out, their voices would be the first to fall silent. She had learned early how to exist without being noticed. In a house full of noise, she became quiet. While her brothers filled every room with confidence and pride, she stayed in the background, watching, listening, understanding more than anyone realized. They were always praised, always chosen, always right. And she was simply there. At the breakfast table, conversations moved around her like she wasn't part of them. If she tried to speak, someone would interrupt. If she made a mistake, it became a joke that lasted for days. Her brothers never missed a chance to remind her that she was different, that she didn't belong in the same space as them. Sometimes it was subtle, a look, a laugh. Other times, it was direct, sharp words that stayed with her long after the moment passed. "Why do you even try?" one of them said once, shaking his head with a smirk. "You'll never be like us." She didn't respond. She never did. Not because the words didn't hurt, but because she had learned that reacting only made it worse. So instead, she focused on what she could control: her studies, her small responsibilities, the quiet routines that gave her some sense of stability. She worked harder than anyone noticed, pushing herself not for their approval, but because something inside her refused to give up. At night, when the house finally grew silent, she allowed herself to think about a different life, one where she wasn't constantly compared, constantly dismissed, a life where she didn't have to prove her worth just to be seen. She didn't know how she would get there, but the thought alone was enough to keep her going. There were moments, though, when the weight of everything became too much, like the day her brothers celebrated another achievement, surrounded by praise and attention, while she stood just a few steps away, holding something she had worked on for weeks. No one asked about it. No one even noticed it was there. She slowly lowered it, the excitement fading into something quieter, something heavier. That was the moment she understood something clearly. She wasn't invisible because she lacked value. She was invisible because no one had ever taken the time to look. And still, she stayed. Not out of weakness, but because she didn't yet know the truth. She didn't know that her place in that house was built on something hidden, that the distance she felt wasn't imagined. It was real, carefully maintained, protected by silence and secrets that were never meant to reach her. But something had already begun to shift, a feeling she couldn't explain, a quiet sense that something about her life didn't fully add up. Helry. It was in the way certain conversations stopped when she entered the room, the way her questions were often avoided instead of answered, the way she sometimes caught a look, just for a second, didn't match the story she had always been told. She didn't have proof, not yet. But for the first time, she wasn't just accepting things the way they were. She was starting to notice. And once someone begins to notice the truth, it doesn't stay hidden for long. She always felt like something didn't fit, like her life had pieces missing that no one wanted her to find. But the day she stopped ignoring that feeling, everything began to change, and there was no going back after that. It started with something small, a drawer she had never opened before. She wasn't looking for anything important, just trying to find an old notebook she had misplaced. But as she pulled it open, her eyes landed on an envelope tucked neatly beneath a stack of documents. It didn't belong with the rest. She hesitated for a moment, her instincts telling her to leave it alone. But something stronger pushed her forward. Slowly, she picked it up. Her name was written on it. Her heart skipped. She turned it over, noticing how carefully it had been sealed, as if it was never meant to be touched. For a few seconds she just stared at it, her thoughts racing. Then, without overthinking it any further, she opened it. Inside was a letter, and something else. Her hands trembled slightly as her eyes moved across the words. At first, it didn't make sense. The language felt distant, formal, unfamiliar. But then certain lines began to stand out. Words that connected directly to her, mentions of a past she didn't remember, and then a name she had heard before, not in her home, but outside, in conversations, in news, in the way people spoke with quiet respect. A powerful man, a wealthy figure, someone far removed from her life. So why was his name in a letter addressed to her? Her breathing slowed as the realization began to form, piece by piece. It wasn't just a coincidence, it couldn't be. She reached for the second item in the envelope. Clear, undeniable. She read it once, then again, and again. Each time, the meaning stayed the same. The impact grew heavier. This isn't possible, she whispered to herself. But it was. Everything she thought she knew about her life suddenly felt unstable. The house she lived in, the people she called family, the years she had spent trying to belong, None of it made sense anymore. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. She quickly folded the paper, her heart racing, and turned just as one of her brothers stepped into the room. "What are you doing in here?" he asked, his tone sharp, suspicious. She looked at him, really looked this time, not with the same quiet acceptance, but with something different, something stronger. She said slowly. He frowned. "Then put it back. That's not your stuff." Her grip tightened slightly. "It has my name on it." That made him pause, just for a second. But it was enough. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice no longer as confident as before. She stepped forward, holding the envelope where he could see it. I think there's something you're not telling me." Silence filled the room instantly. The kind of silence that didn't feel normal. The kind that confirmed more than any words could. His expression changed, the usual arrogance fading into something uncertain. "You shouldn't be going through things that aren't yours." "That's not an answer," she replied, her voice steady now. For the first time, she wasn't backing down. First time she wasn't the one being dismissed. "I want the truth," she said. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he glanced toward the door, as if considering whether to call someone else in, or walk away completely. But it was too late for that, because the moment she opened that letter, the truth had already found its way to her. And now, there was no hiding it anymore. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The truth was already in her hands. And for the first time, they were the ones who didn't know what to say. They were the ones who didn't hope. The room felt like the walls were closing in on a secret that had been hidden for too long. Her brother stood there, silent, his usual confidence completely gone. She watched him carefully, noticing every small shift in his expression, every hesitation he couldn't hide. "Say something," she said quietly. He ran a hand through his hair, avoiding her eyes. "You don't understand what you're holding." "Then help me understand," she replied, her voice still calm but firmer now. "Because right now, it looks like my entire life has been a lie." That word hit harder than anything else. A lie. Footsteps approached again, quicker this time. Another brother entered, followed by someone older, someone who had always carried authority in the house. The moment they saw the envelope in her hand, everything changed. The air shifted. No one needed to ask what was happening. "You weren't supposed to find that," the older one said, his tone low, controlled. He let out a small, almost disbelieving breath. "So it's true." No one denied it. CP4. That silence confirmed more than any explanation could. Her eyes moved from one face to another, searching for something familiar, something real. But all she found was discomfort and guilt. "Who is he?" she asked, holding up the paper slightly. "And why is his name connected to mine?" Another pause, longer this time. Finally, one of her brothers spoke, his voice no longer sharp but uncertain. "Your real father." The words landed heavily, echoing in her mind. Your real father. A moment, everything around her faded. The room, the people, the years of memories. All of it felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. "No," she said softly, shaking her head. "That doesn't make sense. You're my family." The older one stepped forward, his expression tightening. "We raised you." "That's not the same thing," she replied instantly. The response surprised even her. It came without hesitation, without fear. "Then why didn't you tell me?" she continued, her voice beginning to break through the calm she had held onto. "Why did I have to find out like this?" No one answered right away. Because there was no simple answer. It was complicated, one of them finally said. She let out a short, bitter laugh. Complicated or convenient? That question hit its mark. They exchanged glances, none of them willing to take full responsibility for the truth. But she could see it clearly now. This wasn't about protecting her. It was about control, about keeping things the way they wanted. "Does he know about me?" she asked, her voice quieter now, but more intense. Another silence, then a nod. "He's been trying to find you," someone admitted. Her breath caught. All those years, while she was trying to fit into a place that never truly accepted her, someone out there had been searching for her. "Then why am I still here?" she asked. No one had a good answer, because deep down, they all knew the truth. She had never been meant to stay hidden forever. And now that she knew, everything was about to change. Looked down at the paper one last time, then back at them. The same people who once made her feel small now stood in front of her, unsure, almost afraid of what she might do next. But she didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue anymore. Because the moment she understood who she really was, she no longer needed their. For the first time in her life, they realized something they had never considered before. They were the ones losing control. They thought the truth would break her. She would cry, hesitate, or beg for answers. But what they didn't expect was the silence that followed. The kind of silence that comes when someone finally understands their worth. She didn't argue anymore. She didn't need to. The paper in her hand felt heavier than before, not because of confusion, but because of clarity. Every moment she had doubted herself, Every time she was made to feel less. It all started to make sense in a way that was both painful and free. "I want to meet him," she said. Her voice was calm, steady, leaving no room for negotiation. Reaction was immediate. Tension returned to the room, sharper than before. One of her brothers stepped forward, his expression defensive. "It's not that simple." "It is for me," she replied, meeting his gaze without hesitation. "You don't know what you're walking into," another added, trying to regain some control over the situation. "His world is different." She gave a small, almost ironic smile. "So is the truth, apparently." That silenced them again. For years they had spoken over her, dismissed her, made decisions without considering her voice. Now, standing in front of them, she wasn't the same person they thought they knew. She wasn't asking anymore. She was deciding within days. Everything moved quickly. Arrangements were made, calls were exchanged, and for the first time, no one tried to stop her. Maybe they couldn't, or maybe they knew it was already too late. The day she left the house felt strangely quiet. No arguments, no last-minute attempts to change her mind. Just a heavy stillness, as if the place itself knew something irreversible had happened. She paused at the door for a brief second, not out of hesitation, but out of realization. This place had shaped her, but it had never defined her. Then she walked away. The car ride felt longer than it was. Her thoughts shifted between curiosity and something deeper. Something she couldn't quite name. She wasn't nervous in the way she expected. Instead, there was a quiet anticipation, like she was finally stepping towards something that had always been waiting for her. When she arrived, everything felt different. The space, the atmosphere, even the air carried a sense of calm she wasn't used to. And then she saw him. He wasn't what she expected. There was no distance in his expression, no coldness, just a quiet intensity, mixed with something that looked a lot like regret. For a moment, neither of them moved. Years of separation, of silence, of unanswered questions, all of it stood between them. Then he took a step forward. "I've been waiting for this moment," he said, his voice steady but softer than she imagined. She studied him carefully, searching for something familiar, something that connected them beyond words, and somehow, she found it. "I didn't know," she admitted. "I know," he replied, a hint of pain crossing his face, "and I'm sorry for that." The apology wasn't rushed, it wasn't forced, it felt real. That alone changed everything. For the first time she wasn't being judged, compared, or dismissed. She was being seen, fully, honestly, without conditions. Behind her the past still existed, the house, the people, the years she had endured. But in that moment, none of it held the same weight anymore. Because standing in front of her was the truth, and somewhere far away, in the place she once called home, her brothers were left with something they had never experienced before. The realization that the girl they mocked had stepped into a life that was never meant to be small. And this time, she wasn't looking back.